Hello and welcome again to my YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed yet, this is the right time to hit the subscription button. But for today, I want us to consider a very important topic, and that is 5 ways of knowing that you are in a troubled marriage, or 5 ways of knowing that your marriage is heading to being in trouble. Beloved, when God created the institution of marriage, He had some amazing plans for humanity. He has some amazing purposes for humanity. And there are 3 main purposes for which God created marriage. And the first one is companionship. In Genesis 2:18, Bible says that it was not good for a man to be alone. That was God speaking. And because of that, what God did was to create Eve to be a companion for Adam. And so marriage is for companionship. The second reason for marriage is for procreation. In Genesis 1:28, it talks about how Adam and Eve came together, and God created both of them to come together and be fruitful and multiply. And so procreation is connected to intimacy, connectedness between the man and the woman. And the last reason why God created marriage is for redemption. And that's my favorite part. That is where a man and a woman come together and they help each other to fulfill purpose. They help each other to live the Christ-like life and prepare themselves for heaven. And so God had these great plans for marriage. But you realize that when a couple marries, sometimes they get busy. Sometimes they get too comfortable with each other. And so instead of fulfilling these purposes, they could be distracted or sidetracked. And oftentimes you will not even realize, or they might not even realize, that they are moving away from these 3 major purposes for which God created marriages. And by the time they realize, they are gradually sinking. They are gradually going down the hill, rather than flourishing, rather than increasing, rather than making sure that their marriage is getting better. And so if you're married or yet to marry, I don't want you to get married and start sinking. If you're married and you're sinking, I want you to rise up. And so I want to identify 5 main points that would help you. They are indicators that anytime you see one of them surging or arising in your marriage, you know that it's time to take action. What is the first one? The first one is to pay attention to communication in your marriage. If a marriage is on the verge of breaking down or on the hill of breaking down, there is often communication breakdown. That is when you realize that a couple no longer takes interest in talking with each other. They no longer want to discuss issues, because anytime they talk, they are likely to find themselves in conflict. They are likely to be blaming each other. So everybody wants to stay in their own corner. They don't want to message each other again. They don't send romantic texts to each other again. They are all just being in their own small spaces. The second point is spending less time together. You know, when a couple loves each other, they build friendship. There's connectivity. Your husband goes to work, you can't wait for your husband to come back home. Your wife travels and you're missing her so dearly. You're calling her, you're sending her messages. But when it gets to the point where those desires start diminishing, then you know that your marriage is getting into trouble. When you realize one party desires or wants to be on social media instead of talking to you, in marriage, you should be your wife or husband's social media. They should be scrolling up and down looking for you. They shouldn't be scrolling up and down looking for their celebrities and their favorite people, couples and all of that. You should be the social media of your spouse. And so if they are always on the internet, on IG, on Facebook, on YouTube, entertaining themselves, then you know that you need to pay attention to the marriage. It could also be that some friends would be connecting to your spouse, or they're connecting to their spouses, and they are getting more interested in hanging out with the boys or the guys and hanging out with the ladies instead of spending time with you. That can also be a red flag that you need to pay attention to. Point number 3, lack of intimacy. When you're married, you're connected in a sexual way, in an emotional way, in so many ways. And so once you realize that there's lack of transparency, lack of intimacy, then you know that your marriage needs work. The fourth point I want to highlight is secrecy and a lack of trust. Once you descend and you get to this point, sometimes it can be getting dangerous, and so you really have to be careful. At this point, because there's a lack of trust, one party doesn't want you to know what is going on in their lives. It could be that they are building something secretly. Now they don't even trust you in the relationship or marriage. So they may be building a house, they may be saving in some bank or in some they may be having some investment, because probably they are thinking, I don't even know where this marriage is leading to. They may be receiving text messages and all that, and they wouldn't want you to see it. And at the extreme end, that is when affairs start brewing. They may be engaging in extramarital affairs, and because of this, they wouldn't want you to see what is going on in their lives. Once secrecy starts emerging in your marriage, it's not necessarily because there's extramarital affairs, but you want to curtail it before it gets to that point, because you know we have an enemy that is always coming after our marriages. And the last point I want to touch on is that in any marriage which is at the edge of getting into trouble, you realize that instead of complimenting each other, you always be blaming each other, because all at the time you were mad, you're upset. The person is annoying you in so many ways. So anytime they talk to you, anytime they say anything or act in a certain way, it rubs you off negatively. It gets on your nerves. So instead of saying sweet words, I'm sorry, honey, I love you, and all that, it's like, why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me this? And all of that. Once you see that happening, either on your side or on your spouse's side, then pay attention to it. Don't gloss over it. Don't sweep these points under the carpet and think that they'll resolve on their own. Problems don't go away on their own. They go away when we resolve it with godly counsel, godly wisdom, reading, getting knowledge, and also being selfless and be willing to partner with our spouses to build our homes. Finally, in Matthew 11:28, Bible says, come to me, everybody who is weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. Maybe you are in a union, maybe you are in a marriage, or even in a relationship, and you are tired because your spouse is not cooperating, your spouse is not connecting to you. You feel as if your marriage is troubled. I want to encourage you, do not give up. Jesus beckons you to come unto him, and he will give you rest. He'll give you the tools. He'll give you the wisdom. He'll give you the patience. He will train you to know how to work on your marriage. Partner with your spouse with the necessary patience to build the godly home that he prescribes. May the Lord bless you, and I'll come your way again.